Welcome back on CI/CD on AWS, a YouTube channel which is focused on CI/CD and is maintained by myself, Johannes, an AWS DevTools hero out of Germany. In this video, we're going to look at how you can use AWS CodePipeline to deploy Helm chart applications or other Kubernetes applications into existing Kubernetes clusters directly out of the box. We're going to see how the feature actually helps you and what pitfalls or what problems you will actually have when trying to adapt this new possibility that was recently announced. So as a prerequisite for this video, I have already started to set up a repository that has a Helm chart in my own GitHub. This is just an example from a Helm deployment. I have also set up a connection between AWS and GitHub using the GitHub OIDC app, GitHub app that is added to my GitHub repository. And this will now allow us to directly get started creating a code pipeline with all of the pieces that we need to deploy a Helm chart. So let's get started. I also set up an EKS cluster that we can use as a target for our deployment. So let's go ahead and create a pipeline. We are in the Frankfurt region. This functionality is available in all of the commercial regions where CodePipeline is available today. And this should be pretty simple. Let's call this CI/CD on AWS EKS pipeline. And we're going to choose Qt. We're going to create a new service role. We're going to keep the default settings. We can now choose the source provider. It's funny that code commit is still here, even though it's not supported anymore. As I said, we're going to use GitHub as an app. We need to use the connection to the repository. The repository is private as of today, so you will not be able to see that. I think I called that Helm example over here. We can choose the default branch, so we're going to use main. We are then also going to stick to the code pipeline defaults, and we will then go as a next step. And over here, we are going to skip the build stage because we're really just doing deployment. We are also going to skip the test stage. Now we are at the deploy stage, and this is where we can now choose the EKS deploy option, which we can now set up over here. The input artifacts that we're going to choose will need to be the source artifacts that we have. We need to choose the cluster. This is the cluster that we set up using EKS auto mode before. We can now give our Helm chart a release, and we are gonna give this a name like dev deployment, and we can then say we're gonna use this location, right, which is the one that we actually going to use. And once we have that, we can now override some values if you want to. And here we're going to be sure that we put this into the Kubernetes namespace for our dev step, because I want to be able to add a second step for the production instance at the end. Now, this is interesting, right? I think this should have become a different section as part of this deploy chosen, because this is now the option where we can say the code build runner that is going to do the deployment needs to run in one of the subnets. Now, this is interesting, right? Because this is a private EKS cluster that we're going to deploy into. And here we also need to choose the correct security groups. As I don't know which one the correct ones are, I'm going to just add both. Now, configure automatic rollback on stage failure. What does this mean? Actually, it would mean that Helm would be uninstalled again from the Kubernetes cluster. I haven't tried this yet. This is the first time that I'm going through this wizard, so let's have a look and see what happens. I'm not really prepared for this. So we now have a deploy stage, and the deploy stage is now going to hopefully do the deployment. I don't know if it's going to work. I don't even know if my Kubernetes cluster is functional because I didn't test that, but that's not the purpose of this video. The idea is to show you how simple that is to set this up. Now, if you follow closely what I talk about in this, I really would like to directly export this to CloudFormation so I can now take this pipeline and redeploy it going forward. What we are also testing and showcasing as part of this is the new console experience, right? We now see that the new view of looking at deploying a pipeline, which I find pretty nice. We can see that we were able to get the source. and then the action failed. Now, I don't know what happened, but we will start to have a look and see how we can take this ad. But as you saw, right, it's pretty simple to set up this initial pipeline. So before we go into triaging this problem, I'm going to edit my pipeline because I'm not going to be happy with just one stage of deployment. And something that Kubernetes allows you to do is deploy your application into different namespaces, and with that use one Kubernetes cluster to do multi-stage deployments. So I'm going to add over here a second step, which I'm going to call deploy prod. This will hopefully now give me the possibility to add a new action, which I'm going to do. Once again, I'm going to be choosing the EKS provider over here, right? Deploy prod action. I will then be able to give it the different name. In this case, I'm going to call this deploy prod. We're going to use the same chart location. Usually we would now do overrides, but I'm not going to do that. And I'm going to give this the Kubernetes namespace called production. Okay, now we should be good to go. And now we have the pipeline with a deploy and a deploy prod. So I'm going to rename this if I'm able to, and give it a different name. Deploy def. Just to make sure that we are able to see that. Okay, so let's click done. Let's click done over here. Now I think we need to click save up here. Please, if you follow me closely, you know, don't do this, right? You should really go and start building infrastructure as code. And now I am going to click release change, which is the option for CodePipeline to start a new execution of this pipeline. As you can see, it starts executing. I assume that this is also going to fail again, but we're going to wait until it does, and then we're going to try to triage what the problem over here is. Okay, so we are back into the pipeline. If you look at the error message, which is what we get if we click up here, we see that this is pretty simple. Oh, I should have followed the tutorial, but actually I was expecting that the service role that is being set up is going to do what I need. But let's have a look if Q can help us to fix this. There's a help me resolve button that I'm going to use. Which should hopefully now output the permissions that are in the tutorial that I'm following. Okay, this is good. Now, I would love to take this and directly, to be honest, put that into my IAM role, or at least I would want to get a link to get to my IAM role, because now Q, my friend, is taking me to do manual steps to get where I want him to be, right? That's not a problem itself, but Q could be way smarter in the AWS console. So let's look for this role. I think this is the role that we want to look at. We're going to need to add some permissions over here. As you can see, there is a customer managed thing over here, right? That is already available. Let's go and, in this case, add a new inline policy. Because we're going to need to use more than just one. I'm going to copy paste this from here to use the describe to directly add that, because that's what Q gave me. And then I'm going to just kind of look at the relevant example that I have, right? Which is what I'm using. And I am going to directly put that in here. And now I am going to change this to have my cluster name over here. This is interesting. It will require us to create to change the name of the subnets that are being used over here as well. I'm gonna be doing something that you shouldn't. I'm gonna be very permissive here and gonna give every access to all of the subnets, because this is a throwaway account that I'm using, so there shouldn't be any issue with that. Let me get rid of that. But from a security perspective, I would encourage you to not do this at all, right? So please, please, please don't use stars if you don't really need to, right? As you can see, it's even given me an error because Johannes doesn't know how to actually do that, as the ARN needs to equal something that makes sense. So let's try go back and say, and this we are going to, oh, it would be so simple if copy pasting something like this would directly give me the correct account ID, and if I wouldn't need to do that manually. So I think I've been able to fix my IAM role. Let's see. I'm gonna click save. I'm gonna create that policy. This is EKS deployment policy. And now let's see what is gonna happen if we rerun this. And I assume we're gonna hit another problem, but let's just try. So we're gonna go to our pipeline, and we're gonna click release change again. And now we're hopefully gonna see that this is gonna be going very fast and hopefully very successful. Okay, so it's taking longer than before, at least. I'm not saying that's good, but if we go over here, we will now see the logs and that are going to happen. And this took a while, but now we can see that it's running code build on demand. It's trying to execute something, and it says Kubernetes is unreachable. The server has asked for the client to provide credentials, which is something that obviously we didn't really do yet. So let's try to see if we can actually fix this. But you can see that this natively runs directly on code build, which is pretty good. So after a bit of digging, yes, we see that this is a permissions error, right? What you will see is that I forgot to set up a prerequisite, which was to add an access entry to the Kubernetes cluster. So we're going to do that now. We're going to go to access. We are going to add a new service role over here, right? This is going to point at the CodePipeline role that we created a few minutes ago. And I think with that, we can now go to next. And obviously we need to give them this the cluster admin policy. So this is going to be this one, because this is going to be used to actually do the deployment, right? So, and now we have that thing. Okay, let's try again. Let's see what the next issue is that we're gonna hit. Now what I don't like is that I need to click on the overview button and I can't directly click over here, right? So it's like strange. Anyway, gonna go back to the pipeline, gonna do a new release change. Why? Because I always think like it's better to start from scratch than to start from here. Another option would be to do a push into this repository that would actually directly trigger a change here, an execution here as well, as we have set up webhooks accordingly for the source code repository. So we will now see that once again, this is gonna start up. It's gonna go to the deploy, and we will look at the log files again and see what happens. Okay, we still get an error over here where the role is not able to list the secrets in the namespace def. This is an interesting one. Now we get into a situation where we are not triaging CodePipeline issues, but where we are triaging Kubernetes access issues. Let's see how I can fix that. Can see Q is still working, while I already spotted that there was an issue when adding the access policy. So somehow this entry here was missing. So I now re-edit that manually. Now I'm gonna do another release change while Q finishes to think, and I'm gonna send him away. And now let's see if this new execution is gonna be more successful. Okay, so we're back again here. We get back again at the logs, trying to understand what happens. It takes very long to get the logs. I've been literally waiting 45 seconds now. Okay, once again, we're back here and we see that there is an error message over here because the namespace has not been created. Oh my god, this is one of the most common errors once again. Now, I'm curious. Was I able to define if there is going to be a namespace that is going to be created over here? I think I wasn't able to define that, right? So a cool functionality would be to be able to now create the namespace automatically if it's not included in your Helm chart, right? So that would be, please, AWS team, add that for me. For now, let's go to the default namespace. Obviously, this should then work. Let's see. But we will then not be able to perform 2 deployments because the namespace is not there, right? So here I would rather get an option to create a namespace automatically if I want to, from the CodePipeline team to make this really useful. 80% of the time for recording this video was spent on waiting for log files. Still waiting. No, there we are. Okay. Now it's deploying the chart. We're not getting any error messages anymore. Seems like the version that we're looking at here is pretty mature, I would say. It's a 0.1.0. It's interesting that this is publicly available, right? Looks like we're still waiting. While we are waiting, let's have a look if we can find out the version. Obviously not for my style. But this is a pretty simple Helm chart. I don't know what's going on, why this is taking so long. And I don't have any chance to understand over here what's going on. Maybe let's have a look if we see something in the cluster itself. So we see that there is a new general purpose node coming up, configured through auto mode. We see a dev deployment hello world, which is getting some errors over here. Failed to create pod. Okay, so I think that this is an error where actually my Kubernetes cluster is not set up as expected. This is not a CodePipeline issue that we're hitting over here. But I think what this shows is that CodePipeline has the option to deploy things, but you still need to now go into the Kubernetes cluster to understand why the deployment is actually failing. I think that's one of the things where the team is going to need to work a little bit on the integration, right, and how this is actually going to fall together. So I'm going to cancel this execution over here to avoid that I get any costs accumulated by this. And I am then going to stop the complete execution of the pipeline. I hope that there should not be anyone left. Okay, there we are. With that, we're going to stop the recording around how to set up the pipeline. It was pretty simple. And I'm going to do some summary, and then we're going to see how to do additional tests over here. Okay, we have seen how simple it is to set up a code pipeline that is able to do Helm deployments against an existing and hopefully properly set up Kubernetes cluster. We have also seen that we have the possibility to add multiple deployments. We have seen that there is a bunch of things that the team still needs to work on in order to make this a real functional thing, at least the way that I see it. Retrieving log files is pretty slow. There is no possibilities to directly create a namespace out of the deployments that you actually want to execute, which might be a good use case for CodePipeline. As far as I see it, the action is going to rely on Kubernetes rollback possibilities and deployment possibilities, which is obviously fine, right? But it may be a good idea to also allow automated rollbacks or stuff like that directly executed by the action itself, right? So that's something, if you go to bigger fleets, which might be relevant. Yeah, and then, as I said, right, I don't like that I don't have a possibility to convert the pipeline directly into infrastructure as code, right? Because that's something that I would also want to see. But yeah, I think we learned a bunch of things in looking at this video, and yeah, thank you so much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed. If you have any questions on the setup and on the way of doing this, please let me know and reach out to me separately. Thank you.